Hey y'all, this is a video clarifying the participation activity on Monopoly market structure. I did a video on it and I made one mistake. I transposed numbers. If you're following the discussion threads on Canvas, you'll see it, but I wanted to go ahead and clarify it. So let me show you where the mistake was and then I will fix it. 45. 22.5 times 2 is 45, so price equals 45. So that's going to mean this point right here, right? That would be the competitive quantity and competitive price. Does that make sense? Nope, it doesn't make sense because I accidentally wrote 45 as the quantity when I meant 22.5. Then I went ahead and calculated the deadweight loss as being 1/2 of 30 times 30, or 1/2 of 900, which is 45, which is wrong. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you all how to do that correctly now. So let's go ahead and take a look at the dot cam where I've got it all drawn out. Okay, so if you look here, I've got the whole problem written out. We've got the inverse demand function here. I'm going to go ahead and zoom it in a little bit. The marginal revenue is derived from the inverse demand function. We have the cost function. The first derivative gives us marginal cost, and the cost function divided by Q gives us average cost. And then if we zoom in a little, oops, wrong way, a little bit more. I solve for the equilibrium by setting marginal cost equal to marginal revenue, which gives us a quantity of 15. Inserting that into the marginal revenue curve gives us a marginal revenue of 30. We could also have inserted it into the marginal cost function, and that gives us our equilibrium. And so I've got our demand curve, marginal revenue curve, marginal cost curve, and average cost curve here. To solve for, or to graph marginal cost, I went ahead and used the equilibrium point, the origin, and the competitive equilibrium, which is at the point where marginal cost is equal to demand. Marginal cost is equal to demand when 2Q is equal to 90 minus 2Q, or 4Q is equal to 90, or that 22.5. So the competitive equilibrium is right there at 42. Hold on, I'm just realizing that's not very clear. At that quantity of 45, or the quantity of 22.5, and the price of $45. And what happened was, in the earlier video, I made a mistake and put this down as 45. The scale remained the same. I just wrote 45 there, but obviously this is 22.5. It's right there in between 20 and 30. And so marginal cost goes through that point, and that point. So I drew that curve. And then for average cost curve, I went ahead and set average cost equal to marginal revenue, and got that those were equal at a quantity of 18. And that basically average cost was going to be equal to quantity at every point. So 10 and 10, 20 and 20, and then it's going to be equal to demand at 30, which gives it a price. I set our average cost equal to demand, so Q is equal to 90 minus 2Q, which gives us a quantity of 30 and then a price of 30. And so I've got those curves all drawn in. Now that I have my monopolist equilibrium at marginal cost equal to marginal revenue, with price based on demand and quantity based on marginal revenue equal to marginal cost, I can go ahead and do just like I did in the video before and calculate profit, which is going to be the price of $60 times the quantity of 15 minus the cost of $15, because it's $15 for every, the average cost of producing every unit is 15. So that's going to mean that we're going to earn a profit of 45 times 15, or $675. And we can see that profit area as being this rectangle here, right? The area where the monopolist earns their profits, right? And then if we want to look at the deadweight loss associated with the monopolist, what we want to look at is the difference between the welfare at the equilibrium for the monopolist and the welfare at the equilibrium for the competitive firm. And remember, the competitive firm is going to be in equilibrium when marginal cost is equal to demand. And so that still leaves us with this deadweight loss triangle here that I'm going to try and kind of color in for you all. And so the triangle was right. The calculation of it is what was wrong. And so let's go ahead and move forward with the calculation of deadweight loss. So let's see if this comes up. Deadweight loss is equal to the area of this triangle. So it's going to be 1/2 base 60 minus 30, which is 30, times height. And the height is 22.5 minus 15. So let's go ahead and put that in here. 22.5 minus 15 gives us 7.5. So 7.5 times 30 means we want 1/2 of 225, or our deadweight loss is equal to 112.50. We can also look at it by looking at the difference between the consumer surplus before and the consumer surplus after, and the producer surplus before and the producer surplus after. So remember, the consumer surplus is always going to be, let's do this pen, the area below the demand curve and above the price paid. So for the monopoly equilibrium, it's going to be from $90 down to the monopolist equilibrium, across over here to the y-axis at $60, and then back up. The competitive equilibrium would have been all the way down the demand curve to the competitive equilibrium point, across to $45. Let's go ahead and label that since we've had issues with labeling graphs before. And then all the way up. So that's a much bigger consumer surplus area, right? We can go ahead and put that in if we wanted to and say this is the lost consumer surplus, right? Now, the monopolist also means the erosion of some producer surplus because the monopolist doesn't earn as much, right? This triangle here, or this section below the price line, the equilibrium or the competitive price line and above the marginal cost curve, that would have been all producer surplus. So the monopolist loses this triangle but gains all of the consumer surplus from those exorbitant profits. And that's what we really, really, really want to keep thinking about when we think about the monopoly, the effect of a monopolist. So if we go back and if I just go ahead and take out all of the equations and just put in the shape of these curves, right? We have the downward sloping demand, and we have the marginal revenue curve, which is a function of that. And then we had marginal cost and average cost. We can go ahead and say, okay, the monopoly equilibrium is here with this price and this equilibrium, right? And the competitive equilibrium is just right here. And so if we started out with a consumer surplus that would have been this area here, and a producer surplus that would have been equal to it down here, or not equal to it, but a parallel triangle, when we have the monopoly firm take control, what they're going to end up doing is they're going to shrink consumer surplus to this area, they're going to go ahead and absorb this trapezoid from the monopolist equilibrium. Let's do this so I can get a little more clarity. There we go. This is going to be the monopolist's producer surplus. And then the deadweight loss is this area here, this triangle. So hopefully that makes sense. Sorry for the confusion. Let me know if you have any questions. Hopefully that clears it up. Otherwise, have a great day.